Hey guys, this is Stav Karras. I hope you're all having an awesome day because we are going to be doing an album review which I have not done in a number of years, and we are touching on a band that I don't think I've ever addressed on this channel, Black Sabbath. And we are going to be doing the album, you guessed it, because you clicked on this video with the title, Born Again. Now, Born Again, released in 1983, is quite an interesting album in the Black Sabbath catalogue in that it does not feature Ozzy Osbourne, Ronnie James Dio, or Tony Martin for that matter, all lead singers who had multiple albums with the band. Instead, you have singer, most well known for being the lead singer of Deep Purple, Ian Gillan, on lead vocals. Aside from that, it is basically the original lineup of Black Sabbath. You have Tony Iommi on lead guitar, you have Geezer Butler on bass, and you have Bill Ward on drums, which was quite an interesting turnaround considering they had Vinny Appice on Mob Rules as a replacement for Bill Ward, as he had by this point had a long-standing issue with alcoholism, and we'll get into it later, but was still having this issue on this particular album and this era. Now, not to be confused with the fact that on the back of the album cover, you don't see Bill Ward, instead you see ELO drummer Bev Bevan, also an amazing band. I might review one of their albums in the future. I love ELO. But if you open up the album, on the inside, you do indeed see Bill Ward. Bill Ward played on the album, but on the tour, Bev Bevan was on drums. So there's that distinction to be made. With this album, it really is a coin toss depending on what you see online, because it is such a polarizing album in that you'll get some people saying that it is one of the worst albums they've done in their career and it's just utter crap, it's not good, it's not representative of Black Sabbath and what they stand for. And then on the other hand, you get a lot of people saying that they absolutely love it, and honestly they'd probably break their kneecaps to have another copy of this album. So it really is quite polarizing. Depending on what you're talking about with the album, because obviously with an album comes many different elements, I have differing opinions based on what it is you're talking about with the album, and obviously we are gonna go into that, but I'm not ranking or reviewing the album based on one thing. I'm looking at many different elements of the album, such as production, songs, performances, and also the album cover, because they're all kind of different, and I don't want one element of the album to ruin the entire thing. So we will get into that. What makes the general perspective of this album even more interesting is that you have a lot of revered musicians in the general rock and metal sphere actually giving quite a bit of praise to this album. I'll name a few. I'm not going to name all of them because there are quite a few opinions on this album. But you have people like Lars Ulrich of Metallica giving praise to this album. You have Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. And what's even crazier is you have Ozzy Osbourne himself saying that this was the best thing they've done, I think, since probably before 1980, which I'm trying to read between the lines there. I don't know if that he genuinely believes that this is the best thing that they've done since, I don't know, Never Say Die, or he just has that much of a dislike for Ronnie James Dio that anything without him is good. So it's hard to say what his opinion is motivated by there. But if Ozzy Osbourne himself is giving praise to an album that he wasn't on in the Black Sabbath catalog, I would take that. That's pretty good. But you can see that besides these three opinions, there are plenty more. This album does get a lot of praise from well-renowned musicians in the rock and metal scene. So before we get into the actual songs of the album, let's talk about everything besides the songs and how I would sort of grade them out of 10. First, let's start with the enormous elephant in the room that people generally refer to when they are discrediting the album, and that is the production. I will not dispute that at all. The production is awful, and pretty much everybody in the Black Sabbath camp says so themselves. It sounds like a big mistake. There is no definition, and it's one of those really interesting albums where the production is so poor that it's actually affecting the other elements of the album. It's actually so poor that it is distracting from the different elements of the song, and it is actually distracting from the performances themselves, especially regarding the drums. the drums are so ill-defined that I can't hear all those little intricate parts that Bill Ward is well known for. And he himself said that they'd gotten a really good drum sound that, he was quite happy with, and then it ended up just being this really shoddy, stereotypical 80s sounding production that he just was not happy with. And I'll have to find that quote from Ian Gillan, but he had said something really hilarious about this album, which kind of went along the same lines. But this is not a well produced album at all, and I could be wrong here, but I believe it was also due to the fact that one of the speakers was just broken or blown while they were mixing. So obviously that wasn't gonna help things. But I would give this production job a solid 3 out of 10. It is worth noting that the original tapes were lost for a very long time, and Tony Iommi or the rest of the band had no idea where they were. They have since been found, which means that there is a chance that Born Again could be fully remixed, and I am hoping to God that happens, because if it's anything like how Forbidden was remixed, I think we could be in for a real treat. So I got fingers crossed for that, because this production is not it. It ain't it. So that alone, I think, brings down the overall average of the album. The slightly smaller elephant in the room, nonetheless, an elephant in the room, is the album cover. Looks like this. I don't know how I feel about it. It's definitely not their best album cover, and to be totally honest with you, I don't know what my favorite one would be. There are some really, really cool ones. I think of album covers such as Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. Even a lot of the Tony Martin album covers are really, really cool. Like Cross Purposes is a fantastic album cover. Look, people say, oh, it's hideous, this album cover. It's just this little devil baby. And I just think, what are you expecting? Like, it's Black Sabbath and it's evil, heavy, angry music. I don't know, like, are you expecting like little, like, puppy golden retrievers on the front or something? Or it's hideous. It's hideous, angry music. Sure, it's not the best album cover they've done, but it's alright. It's not that bad. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely far from the worst that I've seen. I would say that probably, like, something like Technical Ecstasy is probably more of a candidate for being a poor album cover. I would put the album cover at maybe a solid 6 out of 10. Not the best thing they've done, but I think it's really overblown how bad people say it is. And honestly, even some members of the band at the time said it wasn't that good. But nonetheless, 6 out of 10. Now, the final non-song element that I'm going to rate out of 10 before we get into the actual songs are the performances on the album, not to be confused with production or the songs. It's how well did the band actually play. And I think that the entire band did a super solid job. Everyone did. Ian Gillan really pushed himself hard on this album, and I think he was having a few vocal issues at the time. So despite that, was doing a really good job and just sounded very evil. His voice, I think, adapted very well to the dark, dingy nature of Black Sabbath. And, I give him props for that. The rest of the band did a fantastic job, unsurprisingly. Tony Iommi always brought a very high quality performance to the band. The solos are fantastic. The riffs, he is known as the riff guy. He is the flagship riff maker of rock and heavy metal. So nothing surprising there. Bill Ward also did a fantastic job from whatever I could hear on the album. I really do hope that if there is a remix of the album that we can hear more of that. Bill Ward brought a very unique sound to the band that no one else in the band disputes. Everyone, praises Bill for this unique and distinctive sound that he brings. Very much in the same sense that people refer to John Bonham, and I think the production didn't do that justice. But he played fantastic on the album, so I give the performances a solid 8 out of 10. I think everyone did a fantastic job. I think it was really good. And now, time to get into the actual meat and potatoes of the album, the songs. The other thing that's worth noting is I am going to average out my rating of each of the songs to get an overall mark. I am going to exclude 2 from the album since they are just transition songs, and in my opinion, they don't really count. Like, they sound cool, but there's just not much for me to to comment on other than it sounds cool. So I am excluding Stonehenge, and I'm excluding The Dark. Cool stuff, but like there's just not much to say there. It's just a minute of like soundscape. So those will be excluded. I am really just touching on the full-length songs. The album opens with Trashed, and this is a really, really cool song. It's just a straightforward, fast, heavy rocker, which I forget this came out in 1983 because it does sound quite ahead of its time. You can see how a lot of different musicians were potentially inspired by this album. It's actually quite revolutionary in a lot of ways. It's really, really powerful and heavy. It does help that this album pretty much, I think for the most part, was tuned down to D standard. Yeah, really cool. Like there's not much bad to say about this song. Just really straightforward meat and potatoes rocker. 8 out of 10. Really good song. Now, skipping over Stonehenge, we get Disturbing the Priest. If you want to hear it in a more complete sense, yes, obviously listen to Stonehenge since that kind of blends in. Disturbing the Priest begins as this really evil, just over-the-top piece of chaos. Just Ian Gillan just screaming at the top of his lungs, doing this evil laugh while the whole band is just thrashing it, and it's just so cool. The background of this song is actually quite interesting in like how they came up with the title. It very much was in the literal sense, like almost like disturbing the priest. I don't have the specific story on the top of my head, but it was due to the fact that they were sharing a sort of a common space with a church choir, and the priest had kindly asked the band, hey, well, can you just play maybe at some other times? It's kind of disturbing our choir. And I think the band were pretty cool with it, but it did give inspiration for a potential song title, Disturbing the Priest, which can be interpreted in a lot of ways, but it's a really powerful, heavy song. It's a bit more fluid and has more contour compared to Trashed, and it's got more dynamic movement. Really good song. I definitely think this is one of the best songs on the album. This is where Ian Gillan really shows his versatility and can put on that sense of evil and aggression. 9 out of 10. Next on the album, Zero the Hero. This is my personal favorite song on the album. It's just so cool. Everything about it is just pure awesome. It is also worth noting how influential this song is in that the riff is a precursor and a source of inspiration for Paradise City by Guns N' Roses. You can hear how similar they are, and I'm going to augment that fact and transpose Zero the Hero so you can hear how close it actually is. But honestly, you don't even need to do that. Just have a listen. Everything about this song is so cool. I love the performances. I love how each section plays into the next, especially the chorus. It's just so anthemic and powerful. And it's one of the examples where the lyrics really jump out to me. I'm not a big lyric person by any means. You can just hear, just from this video and probably previous ones where I've ranked albums, that lyrics aren't a huge thing to me. But this one stuck out to me on Zero the Hero. I got the book here, so give me a second while I put on my reading eyes. Yeah. Where the heroes sit by the river with a magic in their music as they eat raw liver. Who the hell comes up with something like that? Like, that is such a left hook, original, ridiculous line that you can't help but just be impressed. I love this song. It's definitely my favorite. I put it as a 9 out of 10. Up next, we have Digital Bitch. Now, this is an interesting song in the sense that it basically touches into the more Deep Purple-esque elements of the lineup. People used to nickname this lineup of Black Sabbath Deep Sabbath, and to me, this is where the sort of pendulum swung much further to the Deep Purple side, and you can hear a lot of overlap with songs such as Highway Star. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but definitely less of a Black Sabbath song, more of a Deep Purple song, but it's still cool. I don't mind it. I think it's got a more bright sound, especially in contrast to songs such as Disturbing the Priest and Trashed, where I think that's much closer to a Black Sabbath-esque sound. but it's a cool song. It's really, really good. I would put this at 8 out of 10. Up next, we have the title track. This is a much sort of slower, more melancholic track. It's cool. I don't mind it. I do think that the production really does bring this particular song down. I know I shouldn't be letting different elements of the album overlap, but like I said before, the poor production actually does affect a song in that it's almost like a first impression thing. Like if the song doesn't sound good, it's really hard to grasp onto certain elements of it. And I think it's especially obvious on this one in that the poor production it adds quite a static element to the songs, and Born Again especially suffers, and it's all right. It's good. Look, I put this probably at like 7 out of 10. It's all right. I think it is probably my least favorite track on the album, but it's still good. It's quite dark. It definitely could have done with a more Mob Rules-esque production. I think that would have really brought the track up. Up next, we have Hotline. Now, this is another really cool track, and it reminds me of some of my other favorite bands, such as AC/DC, in that really simple, rocking riff. It's just so simple and straightforward, and there's nothing in excess with this song. It just makes its statement and just moves ahead. This is definitely one of the more impressive vocal performances from Ian Gillan on the album, especially toward the end as he just keeps reaching really, really, really high up. I can hear his vocal cords sort of crying for help by the end, but nonetheless it sounds really cool. I think this is a really, really cool track. It's just very fun, and again, this one really would have been helped by a better production. But nonetheless, luckily the production isn't enough to sort of bring down this particular song. I put it at an 8 out of 10. Great song. The album closes with Keep It Warm. This has to me a similar feeling as Born Again does, in that the production I think doesn't do this track justice. Because it is more of a ballad-esque song, I think it could have been helped by a better production job, so that I can hear all the different elements that were added to the song, because I think this song ends up sounding quite static and stagnant with the poor mixing and whatnot. Because it is really quite a sweet song in that Ian Gillan wrote this about his wife. That's very wholesome, and I think that's really, really nice. And I really do wish that this song was more justice had been done to it by a better mixing job. So hopefully, if that remix does come out, that we do hear more with this song. But I do give it a 7 out of 10 just because the production really did bring this song down. Other than that, it's a pretty good song. I do think it was a mistake to end the album with a lower dynamic song. I do think if you swapped this and Hotline around, it probably would have been a better idea. But nonetheless, it's an alright song. I think 7 out of 10. Minus Stonehenge and The Dark, in terms of songs, that brings us to an average of 8 out of 10, which is pretty damn solid for an album. So putting all the elements together, so a 3 out of 10 production, an 8 out of 10 performance job, and a 6 out of 10 cover, this brings us to an average of 6.25 out of 10. So it's not bad. It's very, very solid. Definitely not a terrible album, as people say, and definitely not, an earth shaker, as some others say. I think it is a very solid album. Unfortunately, just hit really, really, really hard below the belt due to poor production. So I am really excited at the idea of a remix coming out, because I think some of these songs could be brought back to life in the same way that Forbidden did. So 6.25 out of 10, I think, is a very solid album. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of this video. I had fun reviewing this album. I do have, some other Black Sabbath albums I can review, and also plenty of other bands such as ELO, Queen, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, AC/DC, whatnot. So if there are any other reviews you want to hear me do, leave it in the comments, and let me know what else you'd like me to review, because this is pretty fun to do. So thanks guys for watching, and thank you for your time. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and till next time, see ya.